Welcome to Session Days. My name is Emma Finch. This is Graham Curry, and this is our first critique session for over a year.
And today's session takes a different format. We're pre-recording this on a beautiful May afternoon, and we will be publishing it on our YouTube channel, and that is so that you can replay and rewatch any of the critiques at your own leisure. So if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel.
So we're going to be giving you a few pointers on how you can really polish your images for greater competition success.
And these are our thoughts and comments only. They are intended to guide, as Emma suggested, and I think we should get started.
Let's do it. So this is our first image. It's Rayanne, and it was taken on a portrait masterclass in the studio. So I really like this image. I do. I like the hand position. I think it creates a triangle, so it keeps the eye moving within the image. I like the use of negative space. There's some mood and emotion through it as well. She's got her eyes closed, and you are wondering, what is she thinking? I think lighting is good. She's got a very good jawline, so the light is high enough to get the shadow under the jawline, which is always a good thing. Two minor things I would suggest to improve it further. Firstly, if we squint at the image, we'll see that the arm is just a tiny bit brighter than the face. So I would just darken that arm down just a little bit. First thing you want to notice in any portrait, the most important thing, obviously, in any portrait is the face, and it's the first thing you want to notice, and you don't want anything else that's going to drag the eye away from the face. So that's the first thing, just darken that arm just a little bit. And then the second thing I noticed, I think that there's either had a little bit of clarity or structure added to it. What that does on a female subject is it pulls out more texture through the skin, which isn't always the most flattering. So I would just go a little bit easier on a female portrait.
That might have been done to improve the hair, though.
Possibly, in which case I would take it off the skin. Great to have the texture through the hair. You don't want the texture on the face. On a male portrait, you can get away with, hitting the clarity slider a little more.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying men don't mind looking more rugged. Women don't want to look more rugged.
Oh, good. Glad you said that.
But generally, I think it's a beautiful image. I think it's really a lovely piece of work.
I agree. I think it's a fabulous image. What strikes me about the image is the hair, because it's just so captivating. And also, I think when you apply the rule of thirds to that, the head's on the third with that negative space just makes that very, very good. And I think and it draws you in to wonder what she's thinking about. So yeah, that's a great image.
Nice job.
Our second image is of Rebecca and RJ, male model, which was taken on our Silverscreen session day, which was held here at the studios. I think the first thing to say about this particular image is it evokes memories of what a fabulous couple they were to work with, and who worked together when they'd never actually met before. And their brief was to help us to try and create some storytelling images on a silver screen or Hollywood style theme. And I think this depicts the fact that they did that really well. What is so powerful about this image for me is the expression on Rebecca's face. Every time she did this during the course of the day, there were different expressions of surprise, aloofness, almost as if she was denying the accusation that was given to her by RJ. And I think this captures it beautifully. Couple of pointers. One is, I think with the benefit of hindsight, it might have been an idea to have moved the ashtray, which is just underneath RJ's hand, further to the right. I think that would have, in part, filled that space to the bottom right-hand corner of the image. And because you can't really tell whether that's a glass or whether it's an ashtray, and I think it's important that it is actually revealed. And secondly, I think maybe just a little bit further over to the right would have meant that Rebecca's head was in the centre of the what do they call that?
Frame,
of the frame, rather than slightly to the right. That's a minor point. I think some of the angles were very difficult to get this shot. I think the black and white processing is excellent. Maybe a slight vignette around the corners. But other than that, I really like that image. I think it's great, and it reminds me of a really good session.
Yeah, I think the connection between the two models is fantastic. I mean, they really are looking intently at each other. So I think that connection is superb. It really tells a story. Couple of things from my point of view. The arm again, catching the light, maybe just, I think dodge and burn can really help guide your viewer to where to look, and you can control how the image is seen by lightening the areas you want to be seen, darkening the areas you want to conceal more. So darkening that hand just a tiny bit would draw even more attention to her face, although her face is captivating anyway. And then the other second thing to note, if we look at RJ's hand, it's very big. Anything coming towards the camera looks bigger. Anything moving away looks smaller. Now, to get around that, you'd need to be on a longer lens. You'd need to be further back and zoom in. However, I think in this image, it kind of works. It gives it that sort of 3D feeling, because that's how we would see it. If he is closer to us as viewer, that hand would be bigger. So I think you can actually get away with that in that case.
Yep.
But powerful image.
Great image.
So the next image is Cam, taken on a creative light workshop in the studio. I really do like the sort of graphic colours in this. The red umbrella that matches the red of her lips. It's very striking. It works really well. She's got a beautiful far away look in her face. You do sort of wonder what she's looking at, what she's seeing, what she's thinking. The lightest part is the face, which is great. So the first thing we look at is Cam's face, which is exactly how a portrait should be. Couple of ways in which we could improve. On a female, there's places where you can crop that makes it more flattering, and I think cropping at the waist here would have worked well. So that would have meant that you had the whole hand in, the bottom of the umbrella handle would have been in, the full buttons. So I think just giving it a couple of extra inches at the bottom would have made the composition and the crop look more intentional. I'm nitpicking now, but there's a tiny specular highlight on the umbrella just behind her head, so I would just clone that out. It's just a little bit distracting. And then I think with this, the photographer shot quite low, presumably to get the full umbrella in. Just need to be careful when we're shooting low that we're not getting too much nostril in there. I think this is fine. I think we can get away with this. Sometimes when you go too low, the nose goes over the eye if you're too low. It hasn't in this case. Ways that you can get around this if you want to shoot lower is going back on a longer lens and zooming in. And often with women, I certainly do shoot a little bit lower because it gives that feeling of sort of power and strength, which is always good. But no, I think whilst it's a low shot, I think it's fine. You can get away with that. But a striking image, and it's well done.
Yeah, I don't really have an awful lot, if anything, to add to that. I think it's a fine image, nice and sharp, nicely lit. But I agree with everything you said on that. Fourth image? Yeah, fourth image now. And this is a wonderful portrait of Foxy Jasper, taken on our Masterpieces event, which we held in March. I think the first thing to say about this image is that it is unmistakably one character in particular. It's Vincent van Gogh. And so for us, that sort of epitomizes what the whole thing was about. It was trying to create an image of a very famous painter, and this is done really well. I particularly like the fact that he's staring straight at the camera. That gives instant connection with the image and draws you right into the face. I think the lighting on this face is excellent because there's that little hint of darkness on the left-hand side. Holding the sunflower upright is in a great position because it's under the chin. Once again, that draws you into the picture, which is fitted almost in the crook of the L that's created by the easel and the cardboard. And overall, it's got a really nice feel about it, a really nice fine art feel. Now, a few pointers I think which might improve this a little bit. Firstly is some minor detail on the stem of the plastic flower, a plastic sunflower. When you look at it very close up, the detailing in the petals is excellent, but the stem is a little too green and shiny. You'll see there are two notch holes, what above and below the protruding leaf. I would clone those out if possible. And then if we look further up towards the sunflower itself, there are two little fingers which are just pointing out. They don't necessarily need to be in the picture. They could quite easily be removed, and it wouldn't alter the quality of the image at all. And then the thing for me, I think, would help the image is the crop. The powerful part of the easel is actually the L shape that's created by the easel and the cardboard. I think if you could afford to come down a little distance at the top and a little distance in from the left, so that we don't see the bolts and the other pieces of wood, the other vertical pieces of wood, you could come in an awful lot closer, and that once again that would hone attention straight onto Vincent van Gogh himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's a very strong image, very powerful connection with the viewer. I agree with taking a little bit off the top and side, and then that puts the eyes more on the third, which always feels more harmonious that way. And then if we just have a look at his right shoulder, or left as we look at it, and his knee down at the bottom, we can just see a little bit of a halo, which means it's just been over sharpened just a tiny touch. So just something to be wary of. But it's a very strong image, and it works very nicely.
I think Foxy was actually Vincent van Gogh, don't you?
He really
does.
Uncannily
like him.
He looks the part.
Particularly when he put a bandage over his head and pretended he's had his ear cut off.
Yeah. You've got the Rembrandt lighting, you've got the catch lights in the eyes, so it's a very strong portrait.
Excellent.
So next we have Daisy, taken on our Silverscreen event in the studio. Very glamorous image of a very glamorous model. Great use of props in the storytelling. So she's using the vintage telephone. She's got an expression on her face which says she's on the phone, makes you wonder who is she talking to. The hand positioning is correct when she's holding the phone. Colours are lovely, rich colours. The one thing I think with this, I would have preferred more shadow in the background. So I think the photographer has chosen to sort of pull out those shadows just a little bit more, and I think I would have preferred just a little bit more mood through the background. By having a darker background, it would make Daisy really stand out against that background, and it is quite a busy background with the books. So I think having that just a little bit darker would have improved the image.
Yes, I agree with what Emma said there. I think maybe just one additional pointer, which is that it looks to me like the lens that's been used on this is maybe a telephoto lens, and that slightly distorted the vertical perspective. So if you look at the lamp on the left-hand side, it looks to be slightly leaning in from the left, and follow that line up into the bookcases on the vertical. Maybe just unskew that a little bit so that they're upright rather than leaning in a slight angle.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Mr. Smooth himself, the inimitable Retro Rob, on what I can only describe as one of the most memorable weekends we've ever had. It was full on, and I had him at my house for 3 days. This is on the Retro Rob session day, when Rob did a number of different musical characters, and here he is Cuban singer in a nightclub. The idea behind this image was to create something which had that nightclub style vibe about it, with the vintage microphone, the quite expressive emotion in the singing, and then a spotlight on him which created a shadow in the background. I think the shadow looks great. I really like that. The sharpness of the shadow on the back wall with the arm in position and with the hat and the open mouth singing. I think the positioning of the light on him is consistent with what you would expect in a nightclub. I like that too. I like I like the overall emotion and the story behind the picture. Two further points. One, this is the first image that we've got in this series that's got a white border around it. That tells us where to stop looking at the blacks, and it is intentionally quite black in certain parts of the image. I think you mentioned before, didn't you, Jimmy, that I mean, I happen to like white borders, particularly around digital projected images. When you've got a black projected screen, you can't tell whether you're supposed to start looking at it, but they're not always accepted in competitions.
Yeah, you just have to check the rules of the competition that you're entering. I think most camera club do allow and prefer the white border, as you say, so you can see where the image ends.
And also you can see, based on the rule of thirds, that the head is on the third in this case, which I think is strong. I think the other thing is it looks like, in order to recapture some detail particularly on the left-hand part of the image and the lower left part of the image, it almost looks like the shadows have been lifted. And I think they've been lifted a little bit too much, just to reveal, for example, the right arm in position. I'm not certain it needs that. Or it depends how much detail was in the original. But I like the whole idea behind this. I think it was. I think it is quite strong and powerful.
Yeah, I think it's a very creative image. It's a fun image. It looks like it could be promo for a singer, a poster. You know what I'm going to say about the arm and the hand. So I just darken that arm a little bit, lighten the face a little bit. When I look at that with first glance, my eye goes to his arm and I want it to go to his face. So again, a little bit of dodge and burn, just guide your viewer where you want them to look. So next image is Cariad, taken on one of our very popular fine art beauty sessions in the studio. I think this is beautiful, really beautiful image. It's a composite, so that background has been digitally added in afterwards. I think the pose is beautiful from Cariad. You've got that triangular composition with the arms, so you look at the face, you go down the arms, across the arm, back up to the face, so it keeps the eye moving around the image. Light on her is gorgeous, a very sort of fine art light. It's got a painterly feel to it. She's got that far away expression. It really does look like a fine art painting, which was our intention when we started these events. Couple of minor things just to give it an extra polish. Down the bottom right hand corner, there's just a tiny little lighter patch of floor. I would just maybe darken that down a little bit, make it more consistent with the rest of the floor. And then the skirt, while the skirt is beautifully done and it's got a very painterly feel to it, it looks like brush strokes with all the chiffon, it is brighter than the face. So darkening down that skirt just a little bit, maybe just lifting the light on the face just a tiny touch, just balance that out a little bit, going back to the face being the brightest part and the first thing you want to look at in the image. But I think it's a stunning composite and really beautifully done.
Yeah, I can't add much more to that other than to say that this is produced by someone that's studied the art of creating composites and done this really well, because you would be hard pushed if you didn't know, or you were not a photographer, to know that was actually a composite. And the blending is very, very good. Pose excellent. My only one issue is that I can see that the whole of the underskirt is contained within the picture, but the outer skirt is taking me out of the picture because the lower part of it is missing. Now, I seem to remember it was very big on the day, wasn't it? It was huge.
Yeah, I think if you kept it in, there'd be an awful lot of skirt.
And there might have been a bit scrunched up and rather than flow. So it's understandable why it's been done. I think everywhere that's got really lovely detail and a great expression and a great pose. Well done. Okay, so I always don't like these. I don't like these moments where I look at a picture and think, "Oh dear, that's me." This was taken on our Childcatcher and Willy Wonka day, wasn't it? In studio.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's a obviously a composite because the studio doesn't quite look like that. And produced in black and white with an effect that of a sort of old Victorian street. It did take me a while to realise what the other reference to cunning was in the picture. There is a fox in the bottom left-hand corner, which is very subtly placed. It does rather look like a three-legged fox, doesn't it? Sorry. I am always very overly critical when it comes to pictures of myself. The bits I would like to comment on particularly are, I think as a composite, it's done very well. That blend of black and white tones in the background and in the foreground with the subject is handled quite sensitively. There is, I like the street picture, although it looks a little bit too modern for the scene. You see the doorway in the middle? That looks like it's got a door frame that looks more modern than old. It doesn't quite fit the mood of the character was set in the well, it must have been several centuries ago, not necessarily in the Victorian century, probably in the 18th century, wouldn't it? I'm not sure a street would have been that modern. That doesn't mean it doesn't have some relevance in the way in which it's produced. But for me, I'm not necessarily certain that I understand the picture or the composite elements of it. As an image, there are a number of highlighted parts of the face, one above the eyebrow, two below, the second one below the eye closest to us, and the whites of the eyes look a little too white to me, a little bit too piercing. That enhances the creepiness of the character, I suppose. So there's an argument for saying it's good. I do like the characterization though. I like the hair, I like the hat. I love the hat, and the rather sly nature of the character. Nose inside the cheek is not possible in this case.
I was just about to say, usually you would want the nose within the line of the cheek, but because you've got
an enormous nose
there.
That's not my real nose. Look, not my real nose.
And often you don't want too much side eye, but actually with a creepy character like this, you do want that sort of sly feel about it. I like the way the sort of face and the hat sort of fits around that door frame. So I think that's well composed in that way, and it does have a very sort of creepy, eerie feel to it. So it does work well. And actually, you do.
Fox isn't bad either, is he?
You do have very white eyes. Because when I've shot you in the past, I've had to actually darken your natural eyes because they are very dominant in images.
Oh.
So there you go. You must have all your vitamins. Next image is Eve, taken on our Noir workshop, even though this is in colour. With this particular set, actually, it works beautifully in colour because it's very harmonious. We've got the dress and the background and the curtains and the chaise, and everything's very tonal. Eve was a great model in portraying this sort of femme fatale character with the cigarette and the champagne glass. I think a couple of things that I would do just to give this a little polish. Firstly, I would just straighten it a little bit. So when you've got a dominant line, either horizontally or vertically, this one is just leaning a little bit to one side, so it makes it feel like she's lurching a little bit because the line of the chaise is just is not quite straight. So I would just straighten that up a little bit. It's taken from quite a low angle, which is good to enhance that sort of strong femme fatale type character. However, because it's taken lower, the legs are quite dominant in the image. Having said that, the legs are nicely positioned; they're crossed at the ankle, so it's still a flattering image. And the smoke, I think, should be. I've never smoked. What, a little bit more curly? Do you think with that?
Well, on a cigarette that's burning like that, it would whilst the smoke would rise, there'd also be plumes of smoke as it reaches a certain height. So That for me is I think that needs to be improved to look like a real cigarette is burning rather than a fake. There's is it called brush? There's a free site which has got loads of smoke brushes. Brush.
Yeah, if you Google free
brush berry or something.
Yeah, free brush.
There's loads of them.
Free Photoshop brushes. You can download them for free. And having said that, for competition, I think you are supposed to have created it yourself.
Yes.
It depends on the purpose of the image, so just be careful with that.
Yeah.
Great connection with the viewer. She's looking right at us, mouth slightly open, as if she's just about to take a drag of the cigarette. Nice jawline definition, so the lights are nice and high. There's separation from the background, even though it's dark hair and a darkish background. So it's a lovely image. There's just a couple of minor things that could just improve it further.
Yeah, lots of strong triangles in that picture, and nicely composed. Move on. Okay, so this is from the same session, Noir session. This is Jack Hadley, who first appeared for us at Barrow Hill, and then we were so impressed we asked him to come back and do a Noir event for us. So again, just like in the previous picture, whilst the mood and the theme is intended to be noir, black and white, this is actually a colour rendition of a black and white set. And here we have Jack in full gangster or detective mode, peering out of the blinds at something he's seen down in the street. I think the expression on his face to focus the eyesight of the gun on the intended subject is excellent. That's really good characterization. I like the effect that the blinds are having on the background. I don't even mind the harsh streak of light under his eye. The fact that one eye is closed, I think, helps the image. I would have preferred it if his hand and sleeve were slightly lower so we could see the full jawline rather than slightly obscuring it. I'd also like to see what that actually looks like in black and white rather than necessarily in colour. I wonder whether or not the crop is maybe a little tight on the shoulder and the elbow. Maybe just we can see a little bit more on the left-hand side. No, I think that's okay.
Yeah. No, I think for me, I think it's a great image. My only slight critique, and it's a tricky one to do, because it's taken in the studio. Through the blinds, we're seeing the studio, whereas that really should be outside. So I think taking a step to your right, where you're shooting along the blinds, and therefore you're getting less of what's supposed to be the outside in.
It's a common problem.
Would make it, make it maybe a bit more believable, because otherwise it does look like a studio shot rather than we're supposed to be mimicking location. But it's a tricky one to do in the studio.
Yeah.
Next image, we have got Darcie from one of our fine art beauty workshops in the studio. So this is taken by the window with window light, which is just beautiful. Window light is lovely because it's a cool light, so it evens out skin tones. So if there's any redness or yellowness in the skin, it sort of evens out the skin. And window light can be a beautiful light to use. So she's standing in the nets by the window. We've got strong triangular composition with the arms. So the first thing you do look at is that beautiful face. So that works really well. Composition works well. It's a nice soft light. There's nothing harsh on there. The shadows aren't deep. So it's a very feminine, graceful image. She's got her hand. She's showing more the side of her hand because it's always more graceful to see the side of a female's hand because it looks more, I suppose, more slender, and it's less dominant that way. Gently curled fingers just touching the side of the face. Nose is within the line of the cheek. In terms of offering something to improve it, it's very difficult with this one. I think it's just that her left hand, her left arm again, just darken it just a tiny fraction. Because that arm is closest to camera, it's looking slightly bigger, and therefore I would just tone it down just a little bit because it's quite light to really draw the attention to the face. But difficult to find things to really improve in this image because it's lovely.
Yeah, I think to focus on some of the really strong parts of this image are the juxtaposition of colours is really strong with the red hair. Secondly, in the bottom right hand corner, the corner of her dress is right in the corner and leads up into the picture, and then you've got all those halos of triangles, particularly from the top of the image, which just all draw you right into the. Your studio actually has never looked quite so clean on that left hand side, has it?
How rude.
Great image. We're now on to the 12th and final image for this critique session. And here, once again, we have Foxy Jasper taken on our masterpieces. Perhaps looking a little less Vincent van Gogh and more like a some sort of cool dude who was... is that paintbrush in his hand? Oh, it's a pipe, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was taken in the entrance to the church where we held the event.
Yeah, with natural light.
Using natural light, and then converted into black and white. And I think it's quite a strong image. I think the tilt of the head is excellent. I like that because that makes you look at the picture slightly differently. And also the head, or the left eye, the lighter eye is on the third, which I think helps this image. We do appear to be missing a little bit of detail in the particularly in the bottom right hand corner. And it's got a slight bordering as well, which tells us where to stop looking at the dark areas. It does look like a bit of a hand is missing on the right hand side here. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a little bit of a hand, but it's the pipe that's important in that particular picture. And I think finally what I would say is that I like the whole idea behind this. It was something that was quick, simple, easy, and done well. But if you look very carefully, the vertical lines that are at the back of him look slightly as if they're leaning towards the right. I think once again, if that is straightened up, that makes that because the eye or the brain tends to see a picture in terms of squares, and if there is a line that's off to one side or slightly off to one side, that can slightly confuse. Maybe just skew that a little bit to make it more upright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a very strong image. There's some good mood in there, good connection to the camera, very serious face from Foxy. I do agree with the hand being cropped off. I don't like to crop off body parts, so I'd rather that hand be in. Having said that, we've got a good triangular composition which keeps the eye moving round. He's leaning slightly to the left as we look at it, so I think I'd like just a little bit more space on the left hand side, just so he's got a bit more space to lean into. And then if we look at the neckerchief, whilst the brightest part is the face, the neckerchief is also quite bright, so I would just tone that down just a tiny touch, just to really focus all that attention on the face. But no, this works really well. Very nice image.
Well, that's been a great session. We've really enjoyed it. We've enjoyed looking at your pictures, and we hope very much so that you can appreciate and understand and learn and use some of the tips, tricks and techniques and suggestions that we've made to improve your images.
Thank you so much to those who submitted images for critique, and we're hoping to run a similar session after the summer.
So, if you've enjoyed watching this on our YouTube channel, it just remains for us to say goodbye, and also don't forget to like and subscribe.